In 1620, while the Mayflower was in Provincetown, 18 of its men sailed in a small shallop, searching for a place to live. They came to present-day Eastham, where they were met by a group of Nauset. After a brief but violent encounter, the English left towards today's Plymouth. In 2020, we remember this first encounter. We explore its meanings for today and tomorrow.
Wanikisak, Natasawis, Winata Inane, Nutomas, Nasipia, Wampanoag. Hello. I said hello in my native language of Wampanoag, part of the Algonquin language family, the largest language family on the continent. And I also gave you my Indian name. My given name is Winata Inane, which means in Ojibwe language, man alone or one who walks alone. I also said that I am from Mashpee of the Wampanoag, and in acknowledgement of my ancestors and the land that we come from. This is typical on how we identify ourselves when greeting individuals. And we're here at the beautiful Chatham Historical Society and the Atwood House Museum, which is down on the elbow of the Cape among the Manamoic people, the homelands of the Manamoic. And a lot of folks don't know that Chatham and Yarmouth and some other areas were originally Indian districts in the early years of colonization. And as the native inhabitants started to die off and move and assimilate, the population decreased to a point where now there's very little representation. There are still a few families that live within the area, but a lot of folks kind of mingled in with some of the other praying Indian towns and Indian districts, such as Mashpee, as one of the larger in the area, and our sister tribe, the Aquinnah. Mashpee and Aquinnah are two of the only federally recognized tribes among the original 69 villages that comprise the Wampanoag Nation. So the Atwood House Museum, the Atwood House and the Chatham Historical Society have been working on an exhibit here. And as part of that, the conversation came into, it would be nice to have additional exhibits here that represent the native inhabitants, the original inhabitants. So we discussed putting Wetu up to have additional demonstration space. And so my son and I have been working on this predominantly. It's a traditional house that we call a Wetu. And with the Wetu, the bark covering is typically a winter home. The summer home would be covered with cat-nine-tail mats. The cat-nine-tail is nice because it's a water reed that it swells when it's wet. It's concave in shape, and when it dries, it constricts. So it offers good shelter and keeps the weather out during the summer months, and shade and breeze. It breathes nice. The winter home, though, the bark is used because it supports the weight of the snow. Back then, we had really harsh winters, unlike now, and with a little layer of snow on it, the house is kept to 75 to 80 degrees with very little fire. So this is traditionally considered a winter home, but logistically, cat-nine-tail mats were made every year, so it would be difficult to maintain such a structure today. So we typically, when we do these style exhibits, we cover them with bark. The longevity of this the frame will last about 12 years. The bark will last probably about 8 years before you have to start doing major repairs and switching out some of the upper portions. They tend to dry out, rot first. The more vertical pieces tend to last longer. The bark that we're using here is considered, it's ash predominantly. There may be some poplar mixed in, but the ash is nice because it's a nice durable. It's rather thick. It'll last a long time. It's still pliable enough. You have to put it on right away. And so this project's given us a nice opportunity for me as the father to work with my son and pass on the culture and tradition of building these structures and pass the technology along to my son. And we're really taking a lot of pride in it and how we do it. So, you know, this type of house, it would typically sleep about 10 to 12 people. The bedding, when we're done, will come out about 2.5 feet from the edges. It would go from door to door. And typically, folks would sleep two to a bed. And this was standard for most homes. This is considered a roundhouse. In the summertime, we would live in smaller encampments with our families, extended families. And then in the wintertime, we would come together and live in larger dwellings. Sometimes it would take 1 to 2 fires, and that's kind of how you would name the house, is based on if it was a 1 to 2 fire house. They're elongated, so they're long houses. These houses were typically winter homes that were bigger when we were living more in a communal nature. The door here is kind of much larger than you typically would see on a traditional home. The door would be much smaller, much shorter. It was meant to crawl into, and that way you don't have so much of a draft to disrupt the airflow and circulation and disrupt the fire and smoke. Like I said, once you have this house built with a relatively very small fire, you can maintain the heat because it is a central fire. Central heating still the most efficient way to heat your homes. And then if you were living in the home, you would have bulrush mats that line the inside and come up maybe 2/3 of the way up the walls. And that also helped with the circulation of the airflow. So these are pretty much indicative of the styles of homes throughout New England and the woodland areas. Depending on the resources that are available to the particular tribe, you may cover it with different types of bark, what resources are available. You know, and the Creator, we always give thanks for all that the Creator provide us with. The Creator's put us here on beautiful Cape Cod. There's an abundance of wildlife and food and water, natural, clean, fresh water, as well as the salt water to sustain us. And so these are all gifts that the Creator's given us as a people. We've lived here for over 22,000 years, and archaeologists tend to say 12,000 years, but you know, our histories and things tell us of a much longer time. So with sea level rise, a lot of the paleo sites that they would have found are pretty much inundated with water as the coastal resources have changed over the years. But we're still here as Mashpee Wampanoag, and you know, living and maintaining our culture. The Monomoyak, we honor the Monomoyak people in putting this structure here. I believe it's one of the first lodges like this winter dwelling that's been built here in the Chatham area, down this end of the Cape, in probably 250 to 300 years. So, you know, it's been a pleasure for us to work on it. Hopefully, folks will come down to the Atwood House Museum and Chatham Historical Society and visit it once it's completed. I think they hope to have additional programming. I know a lot of towns will also be coming into their anniversaries, 300, 400-year anniversaries, and Eastham is one of those. So I encourage everyone to, you know, visit the Cape and get to know a little bit more about the Native American culture and the folks that lived out here. As a Wampanoag person, it's always a pleasure to share a bit of our culture so that there's a better understanding of who we are and why we continue to carry on our traditions and pass things along to the younger generations. And like I said, it's been a pleasure to work here with the folks. Everyone's really nice. There's been a lot of attention. A lot of folks have come by to look at it as it's progressed, and you know, we're honored to be here and honored to work with such a fine organization.
My name is Joanna Hollick. Thank you for watching today's episode of the Sunset Series. If you're interested in participating more actively in learning about local history, there are several sites and landmarks here in Eastham that you can visit. One such landmark is Indian Rock. Indian Rock is a 20-ton glacial boulder that was used by Native Americans for tool sharpening. The stone was likely used for sharpening bone items, such as harpoon heads, fish hooks, and stone axes. Today, you can still see these markings that the tools made in the stone. Also known as Sharpening Rock, This boulder was moved to the top of Skiff Hill near Hemingway Landing in 1965 due to shoreline retreat. You can still find the rock there today. From the parking lot at the end of Hemingway Road, it is a 1/10 of a mile walk uphill to the rock. And we encourage you to visit this historic landmark. Thank you.